Live streaming. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to ashestorubies. I'm John, Vicky.
An amateur podcast on life in recovery.
Amateur. When do you become like professional? Like, do you go amateur, semi-pro, and then professional? Is there a pathway?
I don't have a clue how that works. Having never been a professional at anything,
somebody has to pay.
No idea.
I think it goes according to monetary success. So amateurs, you could be very good, but if no one's paying you, then you're still always an amateur. And if somebody's giving you a nickel, then you could say I'm semi-professional.
True.
And then if somebody's like, maybe you signed a contract, maybe you're like Joe Rogan and you're on Spotify, only on Spotify, and then you could say you're probably professional. I think that's how it goes.
Do you ever like record opening intro outros for this podcast in your head?
Oh, no. Do you?
Really? Oh, I do.
Oh, like what?
Yeah. Well, because I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Give me
I
one.
have a pretty...
Give me an opening. Give us an opening.
No, I just did.
No, I didn't hear it.
An amateur podcast on life in recovery.
Oh, that was...
This is a conversational podcast.
Oh, wow. You have a lot of ideas in your head. There was a guy named Warren, Kirk Warren, and he was a grocery bagger and a grocery clerk at a grocery store, obviously.
Okay.
And somebody asked him to try out for a football team, and he made it, and he was a starting quarterback.
All of a sudden?
Yeah, he was a starting quarterback.
NFL?
Yeah, he made the team. And he was old, too. Like, I think he started when he was 30, in his mid-30s.
That is so old.
That is so old. 30. Imagine being in the 30s.
30.
Oh, my goodness. I asked my parents yesterday because my mom turned 80. And I asked my mom, I go, when did we move to Ottawa? Because I was in grade 10. And so I said, what age were you? And she's
What age were they?
What age were they? And so they said they were in their mid 40s. And I'm like, we're in our mid 40s. Like, we have so much time.
We do.
I realized we have so much time, man, time's our friend.
We have a ton of time. We could do something else.
Like what?
I don't know. Move to Alaska.
Our friend moved. Did our friend move?
That's
to
probably
Alaska?
why I said it, because we have a friend moving to Alaska.
I don't know much about Alaska, but I don't think I would move there.
Where would you move?
If I could choose anywhere in the world, like, I know that people move for friends. No, I know that people move for school and work, but very few people that I know have ever moved for friends.
Okay.
Or for even family. People move away from family and friends.
So where would you move?
I probably wouldn't move because I have all my friends and family here.
Oh my gosh, you're so adorable.
But
I do know that about you, though.
Everybody with me. If I could pack them all up and take them. But if I could move our community into somewhere, it would probably be...
If you could move all your friends and your family to somewhere, that's called...
All three of... Oh, that's a cult. That's a cult. That's literally called... I would move them to the upper hills of Vancouver, BC, into the...
For sure, off the grid.
And we have Kool-Aid, but we call it kombucha. Wow. You're making me realize.
Sideways. Okay, so...
I would personally move to Vancouver. Vancouver?
You'd like to live in the city of Vancouver?
Or like Victoria?
In the city or like out in the... Like
I like
outskirts?
City. I like city. I enjoy city.
You're an urban guy?
I like whatever.
It's going to be pretty tricky to set up a commune in the middle of a city.
It's not impossible. I like the consistency of the weather. So there is fluctuations, but it's not too great and it's not too small. So we don't gray. They don't get humidity of 5 billion like we do in Ottawa, and then they don't get the minus 40.
I know, but I just got to tell you, I have no desire to move to Vancouver for exactly that reason. They are gray for like 6 months out of the year. It is like this.
Yeah.
Gloomy.
What are you doing
today?
Maybe it's
going to rain.
Going to the beach today.
Maybe it's not going to rain. We can't really tell.
I don't know. I remember going out there in November and going like, everything is green and there's ferns.
I know.
Ferns. Have you ever seen a fern in Ottawa? There's no such thing as fern and mold. Not mold.
All kinds of... Called? I see all kinds of vegetation when I'm kayaking.
What's the soft stuff called? Moss.
I see it all over.
Yeah, but not like in Vancouver.
I see it.
No, you don't see ferns while you're kayaking.
I'm telling you, when you walk Petrie Island, there's ferns.
There's ferns.
It's not the same.
Okay. So we were out there in November when we came back. There was snow here. And I was like, who would choose to live here? Like, no one.
Do you think it's time to do our reading?
I think it's time to do our reading. We are doing our morning devotional, getting our spirituality on.
I know you enjoy the chit chat with me before we get started, but now it's time to get serious.
You're a good chit chatter. Semi-pro. No,
all right.
All right, here we go.
A fellowship of freedom. If only men and women were granted absolute liberty and were compelled to obey no one, they would then voluntarily associate themselves in the common interest. That's from
read that again.
Book called As Bill Sees It.
Read it again. I think I was distracted.
If only men and women were granted absolute liberty and were compelled to obey no one, they would then voluntarily associate themselves in the common interest.
So he's defining fellowship of people with common interest. Okay. That was very technical.
When I no longer live under the dictates of another or of alcohol, I live in a new freedom. When I release the past and all the excess baggage I have carried for so long, I come to know freedom. I have been introduced into a life and a fellowship of freedom. The steps are a recommended way of finding a new life. There are no commands or dictates in recovery in these steps. I am free to serve from desire rather than decree. There is the understanding that I will benefit from the growth of other members, and I take what I learn and bring it back to the group. The common welfare finds room to grow in the society of personal freedom.
So the common welfare, what does it say? The common welfare depends on
finds
unity.
Room to grow in the society of personal freedom. And I think, so we talk about this a lot as kids who grew up in the church. We talk about how when we were growing up in the church, it was all about the rules and what you couldn't do and the things that were taboo and shows we couldn't watch. And I was mad because I couldn't listen to the same music as my friends and I wasn't allowed to do anything on Sundays.
Couldn't watch The Simpsons.
And so that was all like law and like obligation. And it was all about like, if I do these wrong things, then I'm going to hell. And I'm not a good person. But this and truly, like the Bible and God, the whole thing that God wanted for us is God actually wanted freedom. It wasn't about like, don't do these things or you're bad. It was like, hey, I want to invite you into this life of freedom. Here I have joy and fulfillment and peace and all these wonderful things for you. And here's some steps and a way to get there. And here's some,
Yeah, my journey into fellowship, because isolation is right from addiction. The enemy always wants to isolate the weaker and make that their prey. So addiction isolates us. So then the fellowship for me was really awkward of trying to integrate into a fellowship and Alcoholics Anonymous and going to the 12 steps and then realizing that they told me that we had to get a higher power. And so I was like, church maybe. So we went to church, and it's like, we got to remember what our common problem is. And so the common problem isn't about obeying these rules and we band together because we can't watch The Simpsons. The common problem is that I am separated from God and I need community to encourage me and cheer me on. And we talk about our common problem. But my experience with church as a young person, we didn't really have that. We'd had youth group and we all hung out together because we were Christians and we weren't allowed to switch, like the same as what you're saying. So for me, even the fellowship of AA, I didn't know that I had to be there to recover. I just needed to get something out of it and then leave. But then now I've realized that it's so important that I be a part of it. And a church community and a fellowship to really understand that they say fellows in a ship. And so if we're in a war or we're crossing the ocean, then how do we do this together? How do we solve this problem? Or like, do we all get scurvy because we didn't bring enough provision? So we can discuss all that stuff because we have the same common problem.
If you're going to mention scurvy, you should finish that analogy because
what? Scurvy is from not having vegetables or fruit, not being prepared enough. So then when I'm in the fellowship, we can say we're not prepared to do this, or this is a roadblock of where we want to go. So because if you went into a knitting fellowship, you wouldn't get you don't have the same problem. And so the fellowship of recovery brings me back to the solution, and we can talk about it. The fellowship of knitting. I think especially in this time and age of COVID, that fellowship is more important than we realize. And for some of us, the fellowship has exploded in our lives. And for people that didn't have solid recovery, they're zoomed out. They can only go to live meetings. We don't understand the unity of the fellowship. And so we use excuses not to do anything. There's no live meetings. Like, that person is a consumer. I need to go to meetings to feel better. And that's not why we go to meetings. And so I've seen so many people relapse.
But if I feel like garbage and I go to a meeting on Zoom and then I feel worse, what do I need to do differently?
Work with your sponsor, do the steps, do the program of action that is suggested to gain freedom from the bondage of self. And so that's the beautiful thing.
Because I don't feel like garbage because of the meeting.
No.
I just feel like garbage.
Yeah.
Because I'm full of self.
Full of self. And so it's boring. I don't get to speak. Like, people love to share at meetings because it makes them feel better. I've gone to meetings where people are vomiting all over the place, and they get out of the meeting, light a smoke, get 4 girls' phone numbers, and go, that was a great meeting. Love this fellowship. And the rest of us are like, okay, this is not what a meeting's for. Although we have to have love and tolerance for everyone. That is our code.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me. That is our 12 minutes of
recovery. That is our 12 minutes of recovery talk.
Thanks for joining us.
As we go through this day, would you just meditate on the fellowship? Are you in fellowship? Are you part of a fellowship? And then really meditate on your part in the fellowship.
And if you don't know what the fellowship means, I think that means like that you're not trying to get through life by yourself. Are you trying to get through life by yourself, or are you rolling with a crew?
Rolling with a crew. All right. Keep the peace. Be of good behavior. Wash your hands. Stay 6 feet apart. And we'll see you on the weekend somewhere. Yeah. Take care. Much love.